So today we are going to learn how to write proper chemical formulas for acids. And you can always recognize when a substance is an acid because it begins with hydrogen. If the formula begins with hydrogen, it is an acid, and you will need to name it as an acid. That's how we know it's an acid. If it begins with hydrogen, it's an acid. So an acid contains hydrogen, which is a +1 charge, and any anion. Now anions have one of three endings, and hopefully you've began to notice this as you practiced ionic and covalent compounds. Anions will either end in an IDE, an ATE, or an ITE ending. And so we use the ending of the anion that the hydrogen bonds with to determine how we're going to write the name of the acid. So if the anion that hydrogen bonds to ends in an IDE ending, an ide ending, like chloride or fluoride or bromide, then the way we name it is we put a hydro prefix in front, and then the root name of the anion with an IC ending. So let's go down here, and we're going to look at the chloride anion. So here it asks us to write the name of the anion. Well, we can look on our ion sheet that you have, and if you don't have that out right now, I want you to get that out. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds here to find it and get that out. Got it? Got it? Okay. I'm going to assume you have it. So here's the chloride ion. Chloride. Cl with a -1 charge. So I'm going to write that right here. Cl the -1 charge. Now the acid formula is going to be the hydrogen ion, which is a +1 charge, which you can also find on your ion sheet, and the chloride ion. So hydrogen's +1, chloride's +1, or chloride's -1, sorry. So I just need one of each, so that's going to be HCl is the name of that acid formula. Now the name, since chloride ends in IDE, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the hydro prefix and then the root name of the anion, which will be chlor, and then ic. So this becomes hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid. Well, we've used that a couple times in the lab already, but that's why we name it hydrochloric acid. Let's look down here at this sulfide ion. Now the sulfide ion is an S with a -2 charge. And again, we can just look that up on our ion sheet to determine the charge. Now in order to write the formula, hydrogen, which is +1, sulfide, which is -2, I'm going to need 2 of the hydrogens. So we have to balance our charges like we do for the ionic formulas when we're writing acids. So H2S is the formula for this acid. Now the name, again, sulfide ends in IDE, so I'm going to use the hydro prefix. So it would be hydro. And then you see this little note up here for sulfur, you add a UR. What that means is the sulf is the root word, and we're going to add the UR. So essentially we're just writing the word sulfur. So this would be hydrosulfuric acid. So hydrosulfuric acid, because it ends in an IDE. Now contrast that, let's look up here to the sulfate ion. And we're going to see that if the ion ends in an ATE ending, that we don't use a hydro prefix, that we just simply write the root word of the anion with an IC ending, with an IC ending. So the sulfate ion, if we look on our chart here, I'd like to find sulfate, where's it at? Right here. This SO4 is a sulfate ion. So the sulfate ion is an SO4 with a -2 charge. So I'm going to write that right in there. Now because sulfate has a -2 charge and hydrogen has a +1 charge, my formula is going to be H2SO4. Because I've got to balance those charges. And then when I go to write the name, I don't need that hydro prefix because sulfate ends in ATE. So this is simply going to be sulfuric acid. So see the difference between sulfide, it's hydrosulfuric acid. Sulfate is simply sulfuric acid. And then I'm going to write another one in here that's not listed up here. And that's going to be the sulfite ion. Because I didn't have the ITE endings up here. If the anion ends in ITE, like sulfite or phosphite, then the acid ends in OUS. So it becomes an OUS acid. So if we look up the sulfite ion and you look that up on your sheet, you will see that the sulfite ion is an SO3 with a -2 charge. So this formula is going to be similar to the sulfate. The only difference is it's going to be H2SO3 instead of H2SO4. So H2SO3, and because it ends in an ite, my acid name ends in an OUS. So this is going to be sulfurous acid. So these are examples of the different ways you're going to learn to name acids. And so what you'll do now is you'll go through the remainder of this worksheet and complete both tables here. Notice all the rest of these end in an 8, an ATE ending. So all of your acid names here should end in IC. All of these down here end in an IDE ending. So these should all end in the hydro with the IC. On the back side of this worksheet then, what I'd like you to do is to complete the back side with the type of compound that it is, ionic, molecular, or acidic, and then writing down the name for them. And notice up here at top I have how you recognize and how you name ionic compounds, how you recognize and name acids, and I do have the ITE ending, the OUS ending for the acid here, and then also for the molecular compound. So remember the ionic compounds, a positive and a negative ion, a cation and an anion. The molecular is 2 nonmetals, and the acids are a hydrogen with an anion.